All right, we got another CPA diversity talk series. Today, I've got a recent candidate who's just passed the CPA exam by the name of Mr. Joshua Harris. And he just passed the CPA exam. So I wanted to get him on CPA diversity so that way he could share his experience about going through the exam process and going through the study process. So, Joshua, welcome, man. Welcome to CPA diversity.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I'm on LinkedIn and I'm always kind of looking around through LinkedIn just to see what's out there. And I see this picture of you sitting behind a table, all kind of books and notes and highlights and stuff. And you say, I passed the CPA exam, right?
Yes.
And I thought, you know what, man, I wanted to get somebody's experience who had recently gone through it, you know? So it looked like you had really dived into all those books, man. How do you feel right now?
I feel relieved that I no longer have to dive into those books, but it's a truly great feeling to know that once you're done with all four, you're done for life. So that feels good.
Good, good, man. Congratulations. What was it like, man? How long did you study? Like, what was the study process for you?
Yeah. So on average, I studied for about a month and a half per exam.
Hmm.
Uh, my study uh, prep was a little bit difficult only because I was working full time while I was studying. So having to balance full time work with being able to study for 3 or 4 hours after work was a little tough. But the weekends are usually when I was able to catch up if I was behind.
Man, that's got to be challenging. I didn't have to work when I studied for the exam, and I knew how hard it was for me to do it. So I always
Mhm.
give a hats off to anybody who studied and had to work at the same time, right? So then, what was the exam like? What was it like when you actually went and took the exam? Like, which sections did you take first, and then how did you kind of, which ones did you pass? Did you have any difficult with any of them? Can you kind of walk me through that?
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like most people get the same uh, tips when people ask, which exam should I take first? And usually folks say try to take one of the hardest ones first so you can get those out of the way, and then that's when your clock really starts. So I listened to that. I took reg first,
Okay.
ended up failing.
Okay.
Um, Partially probably because my study skills weren't as refined as they should have been, and I think just the experience of that exam sitting at the lecture center within itself is its own learning curve. So I took what I learned from there. I decided to go against the trend and actually I wanted to get some of the easier, well, what are deemed as easier exams out of the way, just so I could build up my confidence.
Right.
So I am an auditor, so I took audit right after failing reg, ended up passing.
Okay.
Uh, and at that point, I took business concepts soon after. Um, I ended up actually failing that one, but due to me coming down with the illness the day of the exam.
Okay.
So I felt good in the exam, but due to me falling ill, I had to leave halfway through. So knowing that, keeping that in mind, I signed up for the next testing window immediately, took it, passed it. So at that point, I had two exams under my belt. But at the same time, I still had the two monsters waiting for me. um, so I think at that point, I had refined my studying skills. I knew what worked for me. I think that's an important thing is to learn what study habits work for you.
Right.
If you're a morning person, if you're a night owl, if you are somebody that wants to study for that hour long lunch break, um, in between work, um, if you want to do heavy loader on the weekends. So taking all of that, I ended up taking tax again, passed, and then came up far. And COVID kind of disrupted some of that timeline,
Mhm.
but it turned out to be a blessing due to them extending the expiration deadlines with COVID. I was able to have a couple of more months buffer just in case. Took far and learned that I passed a couple of months ago. So
Good, man. Good. All
yeah,
right. Oh, so that is That's kind of different from from the people I've been talking to, right? So it sounds
Hmm.
like you tried to go for one that you were like, okay, I'm going to get a hard one out the way, but that didn't quite go exactly how you wanted it to. So then
No,
what you did was you focused on the kind of the easier ones. You could build your momentum up. You got your momentum.
exactly.
You refined your study process, right? That first one
Hmm.
told you, hey, this is what I need to make sure I do going forward to study and make sure I pass. And then you got the rest of them done once you kind of did that process, kind of got your momentum going, and then you kind of honed in on how you're studying. Sound right?
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
good, man. And you know what I find is thanks for the honesty in sharing that, you didn't just pass them all at the first time, right? Most people that I'm talking to, I find that they don't always pass the first time.
Hmm.
And reg is the one where they always hit the wall. I hit the wall on reg too. I had to take that one twice.
Yeah,
Um, so it's funny that you say too, you said you got ill on one of them, right? And then it
I
kind of,
did.
I did an interview with one of my friends and former colleagues, Felix. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a video we've got up there. And he said
Hmm.
he's studying so hard that for reg, because he had to take reg like 4 times.
Oh wow.
And he got sick one time. He said, I was like, you know what? It's because the exam probably brought it on, like all the stress, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. All the stress. I think I lost sight of uh, that time not studying, spending it being productive and doing, doing positive and healthy stress relieving activities. So I was just a hermit crab in my room for that whole week, 2 weeks of cramming the final prep week. I think that kind of caused me to be in my own bubble. And then when I finally went outside, I think my body was just so worn down from studying and just shocked with the outside air and everything. And
yeah,
it
yeah.
just came down with
Yeah,
it.
so what I find in everybody's story is once you get to that study process, you really are like cutting off the world in a sense because you're so
Yeah.
focused on all the material that you're not with friends, you're not doing your regular, routine type of deal. And I think it's important to still find that kind of balance in that routine, but it's definitely a shift in the way you do things because you're having to find the time to invest in that study process.
Hmm.
But one thing that I think you alluded to and that I've heard people say is you're doing it just for now. It's only a temporary thing. And then once you
Hmm.
get out on the other side, which you are right now, how do you feel about it? Like how do you
Um,
feel now, right?
right. When you're in it, it's well, it's in different stages, right? So before you start it, I think there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear that goes into the unknown, and it's a challenging test. And so that's the pre kind of the pre feelings before you get into it, and then when you're in it, it feels like that's your life. Is you're studying
Yeah,
constantly.
definitely.
It feels like you're back in school,
Mhm.
except it's only you. And so I think that's another tough challenge is that if you don't have a study group or you don't have somebody that's also actively studying with you, um, your behavior and your motivation is really just up to you and you only. Nobody's checking in if you're not studying for that one day or you take a week off. Nobody's going to make sure you get back on it. So that within itself brings its own, different kind of stress. Always having in the back of your head, I should be studying,
Yeah,
um, kind of makes those Sunday activities when you're trying to relax a little bit
yeah,
less easy going. And then once you're done, I think it just serves as validation of the sacrifice that you took to miss out on those gatherings or, um, you know, studying when you really just want to spend the night just watching a movie or watching TV. I think once you're done, you're now validated in the process that you went through. You're now validated in the fact that you've passed an exam that is not easy. And it adds an extra boost of confidence knowing that, I've been able to get over this hump that was so challenging and it's challenging for everybody that whatever the next venture is, I know that I'm capable.
yeah, man. Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing that I think is important is just understanding how difficult it can be to make the decision when you're doing something that you want to do, right? Like you're hanging out with your friends, you want to watch a movie, and then like you said, you gotta. It takes effort sometimes to really stop and then say, nope, I'm going to go study. like mentally to make that decision. I remember when I was starting in the study process, like I would go hang out with my friends, but when it would get to be like late in the day, I'd be like, Chris, you got to go back to your room. You got to go study, and really like forcing myself to say, I'm done, I'm quitting, I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
It's so worth it because you start to find that groove, like you're saying. You start to get in your own environment where if you're feeling like you're back in school and you're feeling like you're in your own kind of world, you're probably doing the right thing. You're really putting in the time that's needed. So
Exactly.
good. And then it paid off. So
It does.
you say you're an audit now, right?
Yeah, so I am an auditor. Currently, I'm a senior auditor at one of the big four accounting firms, and I've been doing that since I've graduated from school in 2015.
So how do you like it so far? And do you feel like the study process has helped you in your career, like to take the book information and make it more practical in your performance?
Um, that's a great question. I believe that actually the school process, um, if you are in the accounting discipline or accounting concentration, a lot, if not everything that you learn in school, is on that exam.
Mm,
So the process of having to learn via textbook rather than experience definitely helps, and it is kind of reinforced in what needs to be done in order to pass the exams. But in the same breath, at least with audit, a lot of my experience I was able to lean on um, based on what I've experienced, in the internship in my first couple of years at the firm that I'm currently at. Kind of just reinforces what you learn in the textbook and how you're applying it to real life. So a lot of those simulation questions
mhm.
where it's not so much multiple choice, where there is a little bit more convoluted in what
Yeah,
the answer could be. I think if you're able to apply real life examples or real life experience to that, it makes it a little bit easier to get the right question.
good. So, and not everybody has that opportunity, right? Like some people are in
No,
school and then they're studying for it, but they haven't really had all the experience yet to see it in the book and then see it in the real world. So it does
cor-
help, right?
correct. It does help, but in the same breath, not to say that you have to have experience in order to pass the exams,
Yeah.
right? Because um, I have no experience outside of school with taxation and even financial accounting and reporting. Um, I might touch on a little bit of it, but usually the exam subjects are so vast that even if you have experience in one area, you're likely not going to have experience in all four areas. So really, if you just study what's on the exam, while your real life experience helps, it's definitely not a make or break criteria.
Got it. Did you just study with books or did you have like online database questions, anything like that?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough that the firm actually provides us with a test prep program. So I utilize Becker,
Wow.
which I'm sure you saw the books laid out in my
Yeah, yeah.
LinkedIn picture. I utilize the books, and I'm somebody that needs something physical, something tangible. So I leverage the books, but there's also an online platform that has other lectures, has multiple choice questions, has mock exams that you can utilize. There's also flashcards, a test bank. So there's definitely a lot out there. And I think, again, it goes back to tailoring your studying that works best for you.
Mhm.
I know I've heard stories of some people that they only get multiple choice questions.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm the type of person where I have to be able to conceptually understand it before I can really start getting questions right. So I went through lectures. I took my own handwritten notes just so I could, start to understand the information much more. And then I hit multiple questions, did the Sims. Um, so there's just a lot of information. And
Yeah.
I think once you could come up with a blueprint with what works for you, that's the best way to execute it.
I like that. I like that. Two things that I like you said. Find out what works best for you because I believe that's definitely the case. In an interview I did with someone else, they said that as well. Oh, here's the other thing. Sorry, I was kind of blanking there. But
Mhm.
why? Understanding conceptually what the answer is, right? Like I always ask myself, why? Like, why is this the answer? And it's easy when you have that database to just see the answer and say, okay, well, as you've gone through it a couple times, you know what answer it is. But
Mhm.
to ask yourself, why does that make sense? That's going to mean so much more when you go and actually take it on the exam, because the exam is not going to give it to you the same way that the practice quiz would.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you
they're
have to be able to
they're
identify.
right. They're purposely going to uh, slightly tweak the questions just so they know you're not just memorizing answers, right? So they want to make sure you understand the concept. So if they do throw something at you, you don't freeze up and you're not like, oh, well, I learned it in this particular box and that's all I know when it comes to this subject. So if
Yeah.
you truly understand the principles and the way it works, no matter if it's a multiple choice question or a simulation, you're really strong in that subject matter.
Did you find, so it's a smart test. So did you find that there were certain areas that they kept throwing at you because you felt like you weren't doing the best on those?
Um, so throughout my journey, I've definitely done a lot of Googling and like forums just to like either whether it's the vent or just see if like it's a certain section as hard for me as it is for other people. So they claim test lists get either harder or easier depending on how you score.
Uh,
Um, the test lists always seem pretty challenging to me, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But there were some sections where I'd see an answer and I'm like, I got it, I know it.
uh-huh.
But in the same breath, there's definitely other areas where it's like I remember going over it and there's so much information. I just didn't have a chance to go in as much depth as I would have liked. When that happens, I think you just have to try to make the best of whatever the question is asking and make an educated uh, guess or make an educated decision. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's bound to happen. It's impossible to know every single thing that.
But I like what you said though, because it's been a while since it's almost 10 years since I've taken the exam, like far the
Mhm.
first one. And you're reminding me of certain things that I had to find out with my own study skills, right? So one of the things I used to always tell myself was look for those easy ones. I would call them cake questions, right?
Yeah.
Like cake, right? Like you just know that answer. So, and when you're studying, try to find those areas because when you see that question, you're like, I know what that is. I'm hitting the button and I'm saving my time, right? Because that's the one
Yep.
thing I haven't really touched on is and you kind of did earlier when you go to Prometric, right?
Yeah.
Where you go take the test, they have this camera in your face. You're already nervous.
Yeah. It's essentially you're going through TSA before you can even take the test.
Exactly, right? Because they want to make sure you know this stuff. There's no cheating. They give
Yep.
you a wrap piece of paper. I remember that's what they did with us. They gave us like a piece of paper that was just blank. And then
Hmm.
you've got the timer there, and it's like you're getting timed. You know that every second really matters because you've got to get through the whole exam. And that can
Hmm.
be a lot of pressure. So it's definitely good that you have a good study foundation because when you're getting in there, you're kind of balancing a lot. You're balancing the fact that you're trying to process the information, but then there's the timer going. So you don't want to spend too long on something because you might be cutting out your ability to finish that particular section, right?
For sure.
Yeah, so I think those are good. That's really good advice. Try to identify the easy ones. And then if you're getting hung up on something, just try to be mindful of the time you're spending on it because you might be better off just making a good, try to best guess it, and then go on to something else that might be a better fit for you getting the right answer.
For sure. There's a lot of the times where I did not pass. Uh, there were instances where I did get hung up on certain questions, did spend much longer than I should have, which, I mean, it's all good and dandy if you get the question that you're struggling on right. But if you just ate 5, 10, 15 minutes of your time, you have to be conscious of the fact that that's now 5, 10, 15 minutes off of simulations, which
Yeah.
usually take 15 to 20 minutes just to each, just to answer each of them. So I say you want to get to a place where you know what you know and you know what you don't know,
Mm,
right? So you should be confident in what you do know. That if you do see a question and it is challenging, that you either are going to make the best guess or it just has to be a flat out guess. And you can't waste time just on this single question because you have to remember this is a 4.5 hour exam. I have to keep it I have to keep it moving. So
Yeah, and you can't go back. You can't go back to a section either, right? Like you're done with one.
no,
Got it. That's it. You're done. You're
once
on.
you answer it, you got to forget about it.
There's a lot of nerves that go into this thing when you're like, that's why studying is very important part, because you want to feel prepared when you walk in. Okay, so I'm not gonna take too much longer, but I do want to ask this question. What was it like with the firm that you're working with? Did you talk to them about you studying and working at the same time? Did they do anything to help you to make studying a bit easier and balancing your work and study life?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that you have to be very proactive and have these discussions. So at the Big Four, for audit specifically, you're usually placed on engagement teams. So while the firm overall encourages staff to study and use a lot of the free time that they might have to pass the exam, because as you move up, the expectation and the responsibility that you have obviously is going to grow. But it really comes down to having that conversation with your team, letting them know that this is an important part of your career, and obviously, and honestly, your growth at the firm within itself. So everyone there has gone through the CPA process, so they understand what commitment is. But if you communicate with your teams, that's what I did. I said, on lunch break, and this is pre-COVID, so at lunch we'd usually go out to a restaurant, and what I just have to let them know, unfortunately, I'd like to go with you guys, but I'm going to use this 1 hour to either catch up on something I wasn't able to solidify last night, or get a head start so I'm not studying as tonight. And then at that point, once 6 or 7 o'clock rolls around, it's a hard stop on work, and I'm set. I might take a 30 minutes or an hour break to either work out or just decompress from the day. Yeah. And then once I hit those books, it's from there all the way to sleep. Obviously, there comes times where you have to get work done and there's deadlines, but usually people are very understanding with the process that has to go into it. So I would just say be proactive and have that communication early, so those expectations are already set.
Yep. And that's a good thing to consider, because there are a lot of people who are trying to learn how to pass the exam, but also have full-time jobs and are doing things. So it can be definitely a challenge to study and work. And then on top of that, like me, I'm a parent too, so I can only imagine me study. I'm glad that I got it out the way before I actually started, to be honest. Okay, good, man. So I guess last thing I'll ask is, if you don't mind me asking, what's your ethnic background? Because part of CPA diversity is focusing on getting more Black and brown individuals in the profession, passing the exam. I'm just wondering, what's your background from? Are you African American, Hispanic American?
Yeah, so I'm Black and Latinx.
Okay.
So my mother's side is African American, and then my father's side is Honduran, actually.
Okay.
So a mix.
Awesome. Well, you've done a great thing. You've added one more person to the statistic that we are all trying to work toward getting more of. Have you heard of NABA? You familiar with NABA? Alpha?
Yes.
And then there's some other ones, Ascend. I think those are Asian.
I believe so.
Groups. National Society of Black Certified Public Accountants is a more newer organization. I don't know if you've seen that one.
No, I have not.
I can link it to you to check it out. Yeah. Looking for more of us to participate and just make sure we encourage and contribute. So if you're interested, do that. But I just want to give a special hats off to you, man. You did it. Congratulations. Inspire somebody else. Make sure that the studying never stops, man, right? And I'm sure you know that. I know you're still kind of early in your career. I would just say, from the experience that I've had so far, even though you passed the exam and you're probably going to burn your books in a week, keep studying, man. Keep going.
Yes.
Keep setting your goals. Keep doing your thing. I hope to hear more from you. Thanks for participating. I really enjoyed this discussion, and I know that you're going to help to inspire someone else who's in similar situation as you do the same thing and pass, man.
I hope so. And I just would like to say one more thing, if that's all right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely take advantage of these groups that we just spoke on. Take advantage of these types of YouTube channels and videos of people that look like us that have gone through it. Because I think part of my motivation is knowing that people have done this already and have passed. So it's not impossible.
Hmm.
A lot of it is just getting through the mental hurdle of the exam, and once you do that, you'll pass, and then it'll be on to the next achievement for you.
Yeah, man. Absolutely, man. Thank you for that.
Yes.
It is the mental battle. Once you've gone through it, then it's uphill. I mean, it's downhill from there, really, as far as the growth process. You get it out
Mm-hmm.
of the way. Studying, doing all that studying, and doing all that commitment, it really lays a good foundation for your career, and you start to experience a lot of other things. And you'd be surprised how you start pulling from all the things that you learn going through that study process and taking the exam and passing. So I know that there's a lot more to that you're going to be learning and going through as you continue to grow in your audit career, man. So
Yes.
forward to that, man. Best of luck with everything, and thanks again for participating.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is only the first step, so many more on the horizon.
Absolutely.